What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. Pokémon has earned a reputation over the years of stagnating a bit, and that can be fair to some extent. But part of the problem is that sometimes they can take features away as soon as they show up. And I don't even mean like Dynamaxing or other gimmicks, I mean things that were good ideas like the GTS or inverse battles that could still be in the games today, but were just removed arbitrarily without a real reason as to why. Like sitting! I bet you didn't realize that sitting was removed from the Pokémon games after Kalos introduced it. I would say the Safari Zone could fall into this category if the Terrarium from the Indigo Disc didn't do a pretty effective imitation of it for me. So let's consider what aspects of the Pokémon games used to be commonplace that really deserve a comeback. Number 6. The daycare. So it's not like breeding is gone altogether, because I don't think you really could even do that, although I guess they kind of did with the Legends games, but getting eggs on demand is too desirable of a concept for completing the dex or creating the right mixture of competitive traits. But nowadays, the way you get eggs is by the massively inferior picnics in Paldea. And I gotta be honest, I have never even done this before. I mean, I've set up a picnic, but I've literally never gotten an egg from it, because you have to make a specific sandwich first, apparently, and I don't have the patience to waste on such nonsense. That's why the daycare was vastly superior. It was so much easier to walk up to a desk and click A 3 or 4 times and be done with it. The only barrier to entry is playing that far into the story, but once you're there, you can always come back to use it again, unless you forget about it and you accidentally raise your Wooper to level 83. So then maybe you prefer the nursery that started in Alola, where they don't actually raise your Pokemon's levels, but it still gives you the chance at an egg. But I think people mistake the picnic for being more convenient because you can hypothetically set it up anywhere, but the steps that you have to take to get the eggs are so much more complicated than talking to the lady at the counter, even including the time that it takes to fly there. So seeing the daycare return in the next generation would bring a core mechanic of the series back to full strength, because just making it accessible paradoxically made it much harder to actually achieve. But before we look into the next one, allow me to show off today's sponsor, Red Pro Club. This retro Game Gear retailer refurbishes old video game hardware from varying generations, but I wanted to show off their 3DS, specifically the new 3DS XL. They completely restore old consoles such as this and make them like new. No scratches or dents whatsoever, and what really impressed me was not even a single smudge on the screen, a pristine product. And maybe the best part is they come preloaded with numerous games already. You would have to pay out hundreds of extra dollars to get the dozens of games that are included here. So that alone might be worth it to some people who've never got to play these before, like me finally giving the nighttime version of Alola a try. You can go to redproclub.com now to use the promo code EmperorCubone for 10% off of your order of refurbished hardware with complimentary games today. And hopefully we can play them together soon. So, number 5, multi-battles. Personally, for me, I would actually love to see the random wild encounters come back. I just love the surprise of a never-before-seen Pokemon emerging from the grass, but I realize that I'm in the vast minority here and nobody would agree, so instead I'll say that horde battles need to come back. Or honestly, I would even settle for wild double battles at this point, or the Alolan SOS battles would count too. We get normal battles for literally everything else in the game, but the rare treat of multiple targets in a wild battle keeps it just interesting enough to make you stay on your toes, and it throws in some much needed variety. But horde battles specifically were a chance to up the ante and be totally outnumbered, somewhat fixing the problem of the games being too easy, as is a common complaint. Okay, well if it's so easy, try 5-on-1. Horde battles were also a great way of searching for shiny Pokemon as well, and after a huge absence we saw a slight return to form in Legends Arceus when nearby wild Pokemon would be drawn into the battle if provoked beforehand, with as many as 3 of them against you at once. So the technology is there, we could have done it in Gen 9, but no, instead you just throw a Pokeball and all the rest of them scatter. So can we please fight more than one Pokemon at a time again? And maybe then if we get that ironed out, we could even tinker with the idea of throwing out 2 or more of your own Pokemon in battle for a change. Number 4, the dowsing machine. For those that don't remember the name, this key item allowed you to search areas in the overworld for other valuable hidden items. And by hidden, I mean mostly just sitting in patches of grass, so you could randomly search it out, but the dowsing machine showing you that you were getting warmer was much appreciated. And it was always just a little bit different, which was so fun to see what they would come up with, even having you ride a Stoutland that one time. So maybe that's why they decided to get rid of it, but that's actually a horrible reason, because they easily could have standardized a display, so I hope not. But the real reason I miss the practice of the dowsing machine so much is because picking up items is more of a chore these days. You can't go 3 feet in the Paldea region without seeing a sparkling spot on the ground, so you can load up on items without even really trying. You could just mash A while you're walking around and probably pick up a decent haul. It's one thing to do it like Hisui, where you pick up ingredients, but you still have to put in some work later to get the items. But nowadays you can just pick up a free Stardust, powerful TMs, and specialty Pokeballs, all advertised with a big flashing sign. Instead of rewarding players who choose to investigate, they remove the choice altogether and spoon-feed everyone the same overpowered items, diluting their value because you didn't earn it. They completely sucked the fun out of it, so we've got to bring the dowsing machine back to inspire exploration and provide a little bit of extra fun at the same time. Number 3. Customization. I was going to say extracurricular activities like contests or musicals that lets you interact with your Pokémon in additional ways, but actually it boils down to something simpler than that, because those options allowed for actual customization. Even as early as the DS, we could change our outfits when entering a contest. And finally, in Kalos, we saw full customization emerge, letting each player choose their own unique style, even if it was just a different haircut in the standard outfit. This carried on to Gens 7 and 8, but for some reason it was stopped in its tracks in Gen 9, having a ridiculously small pool of clothing, to the point that they might as well just have one suit. And yes, I realize there's a school uniform or whatever, but we're also not at the school for 90% of the game. At least we can still have more hairstyles, I guess. I truly don't know why this was cut down, but I'm also not even talking about just the clothes. The Pokémon series has provided customization in other ways before, like say the seals on Pokéballs that allowed for special effects that you decided on when throwing out your Pokémon into battle. Yeah, they got rid of those. And it's not like secret bases were my favorite features in the game, but they still allowed you to decorate a cool little hideout however you wanted. But even when they briefly came back, they had no real furniture, just some lifeless statues. Something as simple as the PC even used to have better customization, with full-blown biomes unique to each box, but now the structure of the PC boxes have too much going on, so all you can customize are some barely noticeable particle effects in the background. So we had some great golden years of customization in the middle there, but for some reason it seems like as we advance in technology, we regress in customizing the Pokémon world. Number 2. Rematches. Obviously, in any region, you can go to battle the Elite Four over and over to your heart's content. However, that is sometimes the extent of it for the whole game. Scarlet and Violet let you challenge the gym leaders again, but only once for some reason. Until the DLC, that is, but I don't quite think that a paywall fixes it like they seem to think it does. Whereas back in the day, we were allowed to rematch gym leaders multiple times depending on the game, like Heart Gold and Soul Silver letting you take on anyone across the 2 regions. That should be the norm, but it's increasingly rare for some reason. And forget trying to battle random trainers again. All these casual NPCs are one and done, so don't even bother learning their names. Part of what I loved most in past Pokemon games is using the Versus Seeker or some other means of tracking down trainers that I've already fought that are ready to battle again. And this allowed for otherwise no-name background characters to become familiar, and let you watch as they would grow when you see them catch new Pokemon or evolve the ones that they used before. This almost made you have dozens of rivals across the region, and it would be most welcome these days, especially when so many common trainers have just 1 or 2 Pokemon. It would solve that weakling problem if you could battle them again, and let them not be pigeonholed as a forgettable pushover. And frankly, it's much better for experience to be able to rely on set trainers that you know you can face again, rather than just grinding against underleveled Voltorb for hours. Number 1. Fishing. It's truly shocking to me that such a vital part of the franchise has disappeared so completely without anyone noticing. Right from the very beginning, Pokemon was basically sold as bug catching and fishing, with fishermen being one of the most common trainer classes around, and the Old Rod being one of the very first key items that you ever picked up. And even if you could only get a Magikarp with it, the ability to try and capture something in any body of water throughout the whole game, no matter how inappropriate, meant that you could even pick up new Pokemon within the city limits. And of course, you always get to fish long before surfing, so it's a great way to pick up some early water types that can't be found anywhere else. And the 3 levels of fishing rods meant that any aquatic location could provide greater variety than a single patch of grass could supply, letting you decide which ones you want, not to mention the 3 different Pokeballs specifically designed to work with fishing. However, things started to change with time. I guess maybe too much water was a real fear, because in the region with the most of it, fishing was severely restricted. I suppose because of coral reefs or something? I think maybe because they made Lapras a fishing mount, which is an odd choice, but for some reason that meant that you could no longer fish anywhere, only in certain preset locations. And then this carried over into Sword and Shield as well, but now fishing is totally absent from things like the Let's Go games or even Scarlet and Violet. Maybe they decided that since the routes in modern games are so diversified that people won't really care about fishing, or maybe it's just the fact that all of the Pokemon are seen in the overworld now that they think it doesn't make sense to keep fishing, but that's small-minded thinking. You can easily adapt the fishing rod by letting you dangle it in the water to actively lure in the wild Pokemon that you can see. This would actually solve the issue of some Pokemon being overly timid and running away, so the fishing rod could actively give you another way of approaching Pokemon that could actually make you think about what strategies you need to try instead of just running them down, and at the same time enshrine a classic focal point of the Pokemon games, keeping them relevant for all time to come, so we don't have to rely on a Pokemon version of Deadliest Catch. But there are of course so many other aspects of the Pokemon world that need to make a return. And once again, be sure to go to redproclub.com to get 10% off today. Which foundational pillars of the Pokemon games would you most like to have come back? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until next time, stay grounded.